We are continuing this train of absolutely phenomenal speakers, panels, and I got to tell you, you're in for a real treat right now. The panel coming up is really the Austin All-Stars of not just local Austin, but really nationally. Many of the people, well, actually, let's face it, all of the people on this next panel are nationally known, actively involved CPG people. I'm honored to know many of them. And the fact is, this is going to be one of the better panels you're ever going to see anywhere. We saw something very similar to this that Marissa, one of the panelists, put on last week for her Taste of Texas event that I was deeply, truly impressed with. I don't want to take any thunder away from the panel itself, so I'm going to give it off to the panelists and to the moderator, but I am going to be riveted to this one myself. So good luck with everybody. Make sure you ask questions in the chat. You're not going to get this kind of group to be able to answer your questions directly anytime soon. So please, with that, I'll give you this next panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that great introduction. And I could not agree with you more. This panel is about as impressive as one could get, Boston or nationally. So appreciate that introduction. And hello, everybody who's calling in. It's been such a great session so far on CPG. I'm glad that we are part of the Austin Startup Week experience. And so today we are going to be covering key trends in the CPG industry, from keto to collagen. And I have pulled together a panel of just some people dear to my heart because I know them personally and they are really just such amazing individuals in what they do. So introduction, I'm Kirsten Ross. I am the managing director of SKU, which is a consumer products accelerator based here in Austin. And what we do is we really help emerging brands develop what they're doing so they can become just, household names across the country. And so we started in 2011. We've run 8 tracks in Austin, and we've expanded to New York, Minneapolis, and Dallas, Fort Worth. And so we've seen a lot of young emerging brands, and a lot of them are hitting on some of the key trends we're seeing, or just really putting some huge points of differentiation into their companies as they develop. So I'm thrilled to be having this conversation. Please, let's keep this active and engaged, and put any questions you might have into the comment feature or in the comment section. But I'm going to introduce the panelists and then just let them go around and maybe talk a little bit more about what they do and why they're such solid experts in this space. We have Batar Alam, principal at Kavu Ventures, which is a very active VC in the CPG space. We have Marissa Epstein, who is the fearless leader of the University of Texas Nutrition Institute. Jason Karp, founder of Hugh Kitchen and Human Co. And Christine May, the CEO of Gathered Foods. And I think all of you guys have supported Stu in the past. So first off, thank you for that. But I'd love just to go around the group, maybe tell a little bit about your background and what your company does. And so Butler, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you for having me on the panel. Batar Alam, principal at Kavu Venture Partners. I've been in the investing space for over 15 years now, primarily focused on the health and wellness space. Grew up very active, competitive tennis player, played in college, but really moved to the business of health and wellness when I took a company called Lifetime Fitness public in the early 2000s, and that really kind of piqued my interest and drove my inspiration to kind of go deeper into the space, and have been investing in the health and wellness space basically since then, and CPG in general. I'm part of an investment fund called Collagen Venture Partners, where we try and find what we feel are the premier better for you companies across food and beverage, personal care, apparel, fitness, anything that touches better for you, health and wellness, and view ourselves as kind of high-end consulting with capital. We've made several investments that we've been able to prove out our thesis in regards to that on, including Bai Beverages, which we sold to Keurig Dr. Pepper, One Bar protein bars, which we sold to Hershey, And then 2 businesses we sold this summer: Vital Proteins, which is a collagen protein powder business, to Nestle, as well as Waterloo Sparkling Water, a local sparkling water beverage here in town. Have made several investments across in the city of Austin, so very supportive of the Austin CPG system, as well as just the entrepreneurship community in general. And looking forward to being part of the panel.
So, Brother, one quick question. What trend are you adopting into your personal lifestyle right now?
Yeah, a lot has changed the last 6 months. I think, when I kind of look at how my time has been split, I've been trying to figure out how to break up the monotony of living through COVID. I would say certainly one is some of the more meditation and calm related apps. So Calm being one of them is one I've certainly incorporated into my life. There are other ones like Headspace. I like Calm specifically. That if you haven't seen Calm, you can download it on your iPhone or your iPad, and it has different meditation routines, routines to help with sleep, items to help with focus. LeBron James is an investor in the business, so there's some great content from him. I think that's been one big thing. Another thing for me is just getting outdoors, and I see a lot of my consumer spending is now switched to buying on trail running shoes or Bombas socks or things that keep me outdoors a little more, as opposed to some of the activities I may have been doing before.
I love it. I need to revisit that Calm app in my own personal life right now. And Marissa, we're in the same spot with, kids at home and trying to juggle way too many balls. So please introduce yourself, what you're doing, and tell us, what are you personally incorporating into your life?
Yeah, Kirsten, thanks so much for having me. It's always a delight to be with you, and then with this crew more broadly, especially on this topic. So I am the director of the UT Nutrition Institute, as Kirsten mentioned. I'm a dietitian by training, so nutrition is actually my area of expertise as a scientist and practitioner, but really got into private sector innovation when I worked in Washington, D.C. and led nutrition policy initiatives for Michelle Obama under the Obama presidency. And then moved out to Silicon Valley and out of Stanford, worked with all kinds of partners across technology and CPG and manufacturing and agriculture to develop more nutrition-informed solutions, both on the supply chain side and on the consumer packaged goods side. And now get to do that here at UT, working with some of our extraordinary faculty and researchers who are creating all kinds of commercializable solutions from the labs, and then with our students who are turning many of those ideas into extraordinary companies, and then more broadly being an active part of our Austin area and Texas growing CPG that's so well informed by the health and nutrition interests of consumers. So that's a little bit about my background and what we do at the Nutrition Institute.
I love it. So what are you adopting into your personal life right now, since you have all the science to back what you're doing?
I know. I'm actually not a very good dietitian in practice. But one thing, this is my big goal right now. And I think I'm not alone based on the consumer data. We are going to try to grow a vegetable garden this year. My children need tasks and need to stay occupied and busy, and they really like to water plants, which I don't do very well. So fun fact, I have planted the First Lady's garden in the South Lawn. I have never been able to keep a plant alive myself, ever, like not a single one. So that's my big goal, Kirsten. But growing a garden is trending on Google over the past few months. Like it's a thing. So I feel like there's a community of us that are well intended this fall for planting.
All right. Well, good luck in Texas. The weather can kind of throw you for a loop.
That's what I heard.
All right. Well, speaking of a new person to the Austin scene, Jason Karp, please introduce yourself and your great story.
Thank you for having me. Always happy to, help with the entrepreneurial and startup scene. We moved to Austin about a year ago, just before COVID, which was convenient. I was in New York City prior, I kind of have a two-path story. I was in the hedge fund world for 20 years, living in New York with my family. When I first started working in my early 20s, I got very ill with several autoimmune diseases. And like Badr, I was a college athlete. I always thought I was healthy. And it was a pretty tough turn of events. But what really motivated me was I was diagnosed with a degenerative eye disease where they told me I'd be blind by the age of 30. And there was no cure. There was no explanation or drugs that I could take to stop it. And I just decided naively, and this is back at a time when eating clean wasn't really a thing. Gluten-free wasn't even a term. And it was only reserved for people who were severely celiac at the time. And I went down these several rabbit holes to try to use food and lifestyle to see if I could reverse some of my issues. And it worked. And this is, back in 2000, 2001. And I decided that I was going to devote a significant part of my life towards helping people who had some of the same issues that I did, and also developing products that were easier to consume. My family and I stayed in the hedge fund business until late 2018, early 2019, but my brother-in-law, my wife, and I started a restaurant and CPG company called HU as in human. This is what it looks like. And we felt that there wasn't enough products that existed that had the trust and the authenticity that we needed. So we started with a restaurant. It turned into a CPG business. Around that time, I started taking some of my public investing and I moved into some private investing, and I became an angel in a handful of health-oriented CPG companies. I was an investor in brands like Primal Kitchen, the Aura Ring, Magic Spoon, which is a new cereal. And at the end of 2018, early 2019, I realized that my passion really was in that area. And I decided to basically take all of our activity that we were doing within the CPG space and create a mission-driven holding company, not a fund, but a singular company that would have brands that have a similar philosophy and ethos to what my family has done with Hugh, but in other verticals that are not chocolate and crackers. And so Human Co is a mission-driven holding company. Marissa is on our board, actually. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much. Christine, you are in probably one of the hottest spaces right now when it comes to just the whole plant-based movement. Why don't you talk a little bit about your background and what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Well, I can start off thank you so much, Kirsten, for having me as part of the panel. And Badr and Jason, I was not a college athlete, but do aspire to keep health and wellness and as part of my daily habit and routine. So I feel like I've almost gone full circle because I was an undergraduate here at UT Austin and studied chemical engineering. And that's how my career kind of kicked off actually in manufacturing with Procter & Gamble. So steel-toed shoes, hairnet, my brother's blue jeans, the whole thing, and made coffee. So also the first venture into consumer goods. But I didn't know what a debit or credit was, so I'm not as smart as all of you guys in terms of all the business background. So I had to go back to school and learn what a debit or credit was. But when I was in grad school, I decided to go to the other side to learn what the marketing people, all these crazy marketing ideas, how did they get inspired? And so I did an internship with Procter & Gamble in marketing, but did it in Asia. And I was one of the first 5 who started up the marketing team for P&G, period, in China. And I launched Head & Shoulders as a summer intern. And today it's the #1 shampoo in China, period. So, maybe a little bit of a legacy, but it wasn't all me. Then I decided to rejoin P&G and I moved to Asia after getting out of school and just became the launch queen. We launched laundry, we launched personal care, we launched paper. So there were all different kinds of categories that we launched, because everything that we touched that time was a launch. So even though you might not think of P&G and entrepreneur in the same sentence, it really was. It was kind of a startup with a safety net of blue chip companies. So it was an amazing experience. And from there, I went to Nike, and I joined Nike as the regional marketing director for Greater China, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, and South Africa. So I was able to travel, different parts of the world, and just learning just the importance of consumer trends and how that gets manifested in the local markets. Then I came back to the U.S. And worked for the Dow Chemical Company. I joined a .com, and then I joined the Coca-Cola Company for about 10 years, and did strategy, did marketing, did operations, and did sales. And then from there, I actually moved back out to Asia and ran the global kitchen appliance business for Philips, and ate my way around the world. Recipes change every 200 kilometers. And I have been all around the world in people's kitchens, looking through their refrigerators, opening their drawers, opening their cupboards, just to see whether or not their answers matched what was actually there. So it was an amazing experience. And then from there, I went to Beiersdorf, which is a German skincare company. And here in the US, you might know the brand names of Nivea, or Eucerin, or Aquaphor. So I had the pleasure to oversee Asia, and was out there until 2019, so last year, and decided to make a personal move back to the US, and wanted to really kind of explore how I wanted to live my 2.0. And I decided that that was really about galvanizing all the experiences that I had in these multinational companies and migrate them from a corporate environment to an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And as I was trying to think about where I wanted to go do that, I really wanted to be kind of in a startup community. So I decided to come to Austin. And that's actually how I found SKU. And SKU was my first experience really dipping into the Austin community, entrepreneur community. And then from there, I had this opportunity with Gathered Foods. And Gathered Foods, our brand is called Good Catch. And we are a chef-driven, 100% plant-based seafood alternative. And I'm excited to tell you more, but I'm sure you're going to ask me a question, Kirsten, at some point. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely. Okay, so what trend are you adopting in your lifestyle right now?
Well, having joined Gathered Foods and having all of our founders be vegans, I am a flexitarian now. And so I am experimenting more and more and learning more about different recipes, right? Vegan recipes, vegetarian recipes, and incorporating them more in my diet. So trying to become a better flexitarian.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys all so much. Let's dive into the topic at hand, which is trends. I don't know if you all can speak to it in so many different areas, but let's just be honest. Trends start with the consumer. And Marissa, I feel like you have such a great pulse on the consumer and where is it happening. So what are the top 5 trends you're seeing in the food and beverage space?
Sure, top 5. Thanks, Kirsten. I think it goes without saying that immunity is on everybody's mind in the era that we're living in right now, and I think the data shows that there's a fear-driven sense of immunity accompanying your risk tolerance with COVID, and it's really interesting how that parallels depending on who you are and where you are and geographically where you live. But closely following that is optimization, eating to optimize. So people are working from home right now. Buther mentioned it, right? We're looking to optimize our sleep routines, our workout routines, our exposure to nature and getting outside, and eating falls right along with that. We're starting to see the shift from hyperindulgence and hyperhealthiness that accompanied the beginning of the quarantine era now to more normalization of how do I get nutrition and health optimized on a day-to-day basis as my situation is kind of staying, we're all doing Groundhog Day, day after day. So how do I eat in a way to now optimize my performance? So I think we're going to see, both products, services, and even technologies, backing delivery and restaurant and food continue to perpetuate that. The third area that I'm super interested in is clean alcohol. So everyone boozed really hard at the beginning. People are still boozing really hard right now, but looking for a slightly lower calorie or more cleaner ingredient label alternative to what's been conventional, I think is a really big lane to look at right now. Whether it's canned cocktails with more pure ingredients, higher quality spirits in a more convenient, portable format. No one has to disclose how familiar they are with any of that on this panel, but I venture to say at least the moms in the room have been experimenting. And then the last couple of trends I tack onto that list are our kitchen optimizations and comfort cooking. How, if you weren't used to cooking before, you've maybe experimented with it more now. And the data showing that people are looking to get more out of the cooking experience at home. So everything from retooling kitchens to renovations in kitchens. I don't know if anybody's following the home edit trend right now, which is like blowing my mind. That pantry organization is on fire. Along with stocking a kitchen in a way that you can cook. You know, everyone talked about bread at the beginning and sourdough starters. That's kind of phased out more again into this, like what's the sustainable relationship that the consumer has to cooking over the next 9 months, you know, as everyone's still awaiting the vaccine. And then finally, plants, not going anywhere. Christine mentioned it. Plant-based everything. And plant-based means so many different things to so many different people. And this will get refined more and more as the sophisticated consumer drives a more narrow definition. But right now, plants have a lot of power.
They absolutely do. And so I'm just curious, when we're talking about trends from a longer term view, like, predating COVID, what are the areas that are driving these consumer changes or preferences? I mean, clearly we had a huge macro event with COVID and everyone staying at home, which really speaks to some of the trends that, you touched on. But like, if you look at this from a broader perspective, what is it from like an early adopters to just, it gaining mass popularity? What are some of the factors?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Christine knows this much better than I do. But as someone looking into the insights in this space, taste drives everything, period, when it comes to food. Like, you're never going to ever get away from that. That's been true of American consumers for 30, 40, 50 years. What's really interesting is where we start to see healthfulness compete as a secondary driver with convenience and price. And that's where this early adopter concept that you mentioned, Kirsten, is really fascinating, because people who are more willing to pay for healthfulness drive a lot of that early consumptions of better for you and more nutrition forward products and services. And then there's mainstream followers that catch up once the markets opened up a lane for innovation and supply chain efficiencies and product efficiencies that drive that price down and allow a product to become more mainstream and accessible to the Targets and Walmarts of the world. But until then, it's really just a select group of Americans. It's around 1 in 5 that are driven by healthfulness right after taste, and are willing to both be inconvenienced to be healthier and are also willing to pay more to be healthier. And that's a unique consumer. And so that's kind of what we see in the data as what drives a lot of these trends. Now, what drives that particular customer is what drives the whole better for you industry, because they influence, just like the technology adoption curve, the segments close to them, their friends and family who are maybe later adopters, and then the mainstream. And then there's the laggards, of course, in the traditional tech model that come far later or never at all, which is also the case among American eaters. But that early adopter, highly health conscious consumer, they're very skeptical. They hate feeling like they've been duped. And so where this tension with conventional CPG is occurring right now in the market is this sense of, wow, you've pulled the wool over my eyes for such a long time about these products, the ingredients that are in them, how they're made. I mean, this was the opening for Hue chocolate, right? We all just kind of took advantage or didn't even think twice about how chocolate was made until we did. And Hue helped us do that. And rethink where our chocolate was coming from and how it was made. And then once that cat gets out of the bag, you have a highly motivated consumer base that is demanding more and more from its products, and that leads and kind of paves the way for everyone else to follow. And really importantly, for innovators like those entrepreneurs in our audience today, to think more critically about what they can bring to market.
Such great information. Now, one thing that I find interesting, just seeing so many young brands emerge from SKU and just, in the kind of Austin ecosystem, is we often identify these early adopters as like the millennial that's looking for things, but I'm finding so many early adopters actually being, the boomers and some of the older people. I feel like it's different than technology, which always seems to be driven so much by the youth. But it seems a lot more approachable to the broader scheme.
Yeah, and I think Buther would be great to comment on this too, because one of the things we talk about a lot, at least the two of us, is how sometimes this population, it would be unwise to segment them by age and generation. It's better to segment them by pain point. So you have millennials who right now are picking up supplements, for example, at the same rate as aging adults. Now being ready to take 4, 5, 6, up to 10 pills a day, motivated by this immunity fervor. And so I think where you're totally right, Kirsten, it crosses across the entire population. It's really about your posture and your attitude towards health and what pain you feel in the situation that you're in. So I'm really fascinated by this as well. But early adopters are the people, they're most fervent about fixing whatever situation they're in. They're highly dissatisfied with what they're experiencing in the moment, and that can be driven by fear. That can be driven by the millennial desire to optimize and have a values-driven experience in relationship to brands. But it manifests itself in the same purchasing patterns across age, gender, geography, etc.
That's awesome. Thank you, Marissa. Well, I'm going to use this as like a perfect transition to Buther. So the woman who told me about Vital Protein, a great success in the Kavu portfolio, was my stepmom, who's 70, who just found collagen as her, answer to so many of her, age-related beauty problems. So I thought it was so interesting when it popped up in the portfolio, and I'm getting educated, this new hot trend, from somebody who wouldn't necessarily fit that demographic. So, Father, I am so impressed by what you guys have done at Kavu, all of these successes you've seen, from Vital Proteins to Bulletproof Coffee to Waterloo. I mean, you've been able to really early on identify some trends in consumer behavior. I'd love to hear, how are you making so many great decisions and really finding the right brands for these trends that you're seeing emerge?
Well, to Marissa's point a little bit, those early adopters can cut across different segments, right? And Vital Proteins is a great example. Collagen has been around for centuries, especially in East Asian countries, but historically has had the connotation around helping with knee and joint pain. And so the consumption around collagen up until the last 6 to 8 years was a supplement to help an older demographic deal with some of the aging ailments, and Vital Proteins just kind of took that product, that supplement, and took it in a completely different lane. And for us at Kavu, all the businesses we invest in, it always starts with a great product, but it's serving a health and wellness need. And when I discovered Vital Proteins, it wasn't for knee and joint pain. I was in the middle of doing a Whole30 cleansing, and I was getting sick of eating chicken and meat and seafood, and I wanted a cleaner better alternative source of protein. And I was at a Snap Kitchen store and came across a stick pack for Vital Proteins and saw it was unflavored, and I could stick it in a cup of coffee or a smoothie and get my source of protein. So I wasn't looking for knee and joint pain. I was looking for a source of protein. And then as I dug into the brand, I found the majority of the consumers that were taking it weren't even looking at it for protein, for health and wellness. 70% of the consumers are looking at it for part of their skin and beauty routine as well. So it became a really attractive opportunity for us because it's kind of this flexible format supplement that can address a lot of different large total addressable markets from a demographic standpoint in a very simplistic, functional way. If you take Vital Proteins, it's part of your everyday routine, just like if you're drinking coffee. It's a 20-ounce tub. And when I found the business, the majority of their business was online, and those customers were Subscribe and Save customers. They'd run out of their 20-ounce tub every 30 days, and they'd replenish. And what really allowed them to stand out from a product standpoint was it was grass-fed, pasture-raised bovine collagen, which that younger demographic, that younger generation is maniacal about kind of ingredient format. You're getting 20 grams of collagen. It was Whole30 approved, no gluten, no dairy, no added sugars. So it kind of created this recipe that opened up a whole new market for collagen that didn't previously exist. And we saw that as the opportunity, just like Vega, reinvented the plant-based collagen category. I mean, plant-based supplement powder category. We saw Vital Proteins as the opportunity to really disrupt and open up the collagen-based supplement category. Similar thing with like a brand like Waterloo. Broadly, consumers are looking for better for you beverage alternatives, and sparkling water across the board is, sugar-free for the most part, sodium-free, 0 calories. But the guys who are doing it, LaCroix, we just felt like was somewhat an inferior product. A lot of consumer feedback around, metallic finish tasting, and the bubbles causing kind of throat burn. And we went out, me and one of the Kabu co-founders, Clayton Christopher, and in the basement of our office created a whole new better for you offering that we thought could compete better with LaCroix, with bolder flavors, a smoother, cleaner end taste, and really just, again, creating a product that addresses a health and wellness need that we didn't feel like was being satisfied sufficiently. And then we were able to take that and build it and leverage our retailer relationships to really drive the distribution in that product.
I love it. And you spoke to so many things that I feel like have transcended the idea of a trend. It's really just kind of the habits that are here to stay. Lower sugar, gluten-free, non-GMO. I'm curious, like when you're looking at new trends or new brands, how do you separate out kind of the trend factor from it to something that is going to, stay in gain popularity in the mass consumer market?
Yeah, it's hard to do, and it's a hard question to answer. I mean, there's some elements that'll exist regardless, right? People want healthier fats. People like the low carb diet, for example, with keto has been around for decades, but with the introduction of healthy fats, it kind of takes it down a new lane. But cutting keto also removes a lot of nutritional foods that are, important to your health. It's cutting out grains or fruits and for each person, it's a little different. So what you see in those types of businesses, it starts out with, like independent upstart brands that are taking advantage of the fad. And then you start to see the larger strategics get involved and come out with an offering of their own. And eventually it trickles down to even the retailers finding their own private label offering. But the sustainability really comes into, well, what's the underlying need or cause? And is that being serviced in a long-term fashion for the consumer to determine if it's a trend or a fad?
I love it. Okay, so what are you watching right now? What's on your radar?
Well, it's interesting. Jason was talking about the Oura Ring. Sleep is big on our minds now, especially with the amount of anxiety around the country. I'm wearing an Oura Ring. I actually try to invest in it. You got into it, Jason. Congrats. I think it's a great product. And anything around sleep. I mean, I mentioned some of the meditation sleep apps when you ask me some of my personal items. I think devices like the Oura Ring are great. I've started kind of experimenting with the other types of use formats. There's a chocolate supplement out there called Good Day that has, a gram of melatonin in it, and is another alternative format to get melatonin before you go to sleep. But anything around organizing and structuring around sleep patterns, I think is important. Functionality still remains top of mind for us, particularly around beverage. We've gotten behind the apple cider vinegar trend pretty dramatically. And another example of, vinegar has been around for centuries as a nutritional item that can help with your daily health. We're trying to do it in a more cool vibe-ish type of way. We backed a apple cider vinegar business, prebiotic soda business called Poppy, where it's a better for you soda. It does have stevia in it, but you're getting 2 grams of apple cider vinegar in the product, and it tastes great, and it's a canned format that's consumable just like a everyday beverage would be. So we're looking for a lot of times it starts with the ingredient for us, and then trying to derive or discover an end use format that'll be enjoyable for the consumer.
I love it. I'm on trend then in 2 ways. I'm taking melatonin and apple cider vinegar, but I'm doing it in the gummy format right before I go to bed, so I kind of get to eat some candy. And
there you go. Yeah.
Some functionality in my life. So, well, thank you, Father. I'm going to transition this over to Jason, because you are a man usually of just forward-thinking knowledge on trends and so great with ingredients. So I'm just curious, what are you most interested in right now?
Well, we've been on the Human Co side. We've been pretty busy on plant-based. We just bought Coconut Bliss, which is one of the top plant-based ice cream companies, and we're in the process of rebranding and slightly reformulating it. My approach has historically been very almost Steve Jobsian, and I look for things that I want to consume a lot of. And I have what my team calls the binge test. So I need to be able to binge on it for us to really get behind it. And because of the years where I had to really restrict my eating to get healthier, my pet peeve was this dichotomy or bifurcation between healthfulness and taste that Marissa alluded to earlier. And for many, many years, those two could not coexist. And so when I was trying to eat healthier, you visibly and noticeably feel like you're sacrificing. The product looks like you're sacrificing. It tastes like you're sacrificing. And so I've always been driven by, how do we create products where I don't feel like I'm sacrificing? And when my family and I developed Hue Chocolate, we felt like this was as good as any chocolate out there, even though it didn't have refined sugar in it, it didn't have dairy in it, it didn't have soy in it, it didn't have preservatives in it. And so we always think about what we call performance trade-offs, which in a lot of areas, there is a negative or inverse relationship between healthfulness and performance. Certain areas like soaps or bug spray have notoriously been difficult, where the cleaner you go, the less well they work. And so for me, we like to look in areas where people really want to enjoy themselves. Food to me is part of a lot of different happiness occasions, family gatherings, social gatherings. It's a ritual. And so for, at least with respect to food, where I spend a lot of my time, or what are areas where the existing products that people enjoy taste good, but are really inferior on ingredient quality, or healthfulness, where it's possible to create a better version from a healthfulness perspective and an ingredient perspective, but the consumer doesn't feel like, wow, this is a huge sacrifice from what I was used to. So if you eat a pint of Coconut Bliss, or you go buy one of Coconut Bliss's sprouted gluten-free ice cream sandwiches, like my kids devour it, and you'll notice that you don't feel like you're sacrificing from a traditional ice cream sandwich. And so a lot of our focus with respect to food, and we don't do just food at Human Co, we're also doing personal care and household products, but with respect to food, a lot of my focus is looking in areas where the incumbent or what people are used to eating really is deficient in ingredient quality and healthfulness.
I love it. And there's so much to be said about all of those different areas, especially just personal care. I think we've really adopted a lot into our food and our beverages, but I feel like personal care and just some of the other things that really go into our overall health are just becoming so high on our radar. So I'm like almost getting the hook right now. This 45 minutes has flown by, but I wanted to talk a little bit with Christine about the plant-based movement, because I think we all have to agree that plant-based is something that is a hot trend that we're all interested in and leaning into. So Christina, you've been CEO now just for a few months of Gathered Foods, but I'm curious, what trends are you watching? What's happening in this plant-based area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, just in the closing moments, one of the things that we want to do is to be able to kind of frame what we say is like, it's so hot, but what does that really mean? I mean, it's actually, the plant-based food industry is actually about a $5 billion business. And it's been growing about 11% a year. And if you just look at the CAGR over the last 2 years, it's like almost 30%. So this is real tangible growth, because if you compare that to just kind of a normal retail sales outlook, this last year, it's only been 2%. Right, and over the last 2 years, it's been 4%. So you just kind of compare the two. Really, the factoid to remember is that plant-based options are kind of outpacing kind of the conventional alternatives by almost 5 times. So this is a real trend that's happening. If you think and you look across all the plant-based items, plant-based milk is probably the most developed. And then you have like the other plant-based dairy, which is kind of like ice cream, yogurt, butter, cheese. And then that's followed by plant-based meat. And that's really kind of the area that we're in. And plant-based meat is about $1 billion. And when you look at white spaces amongst those, it's seafood. Seafood is actually only 1%. It's about 10 million. So I see the 1 minute warning. So what I want to do is I actually want to just make sure, because it's a CPG trend, I just want to make sure that all those who are listening today is that you really focus your efforts on the consumer. Always be guided by the consumer. And for plant-based, it's about food exploration. It's about being health conscious. It's about being an active flexitarian or plant-based eater. But it's also about transparency seeking and altruism. Because I think that consumers today are looking not only about managing their diets, but also making a social impact to raise consciousness.
Well, I don't know if anyone could have wrapped it up better, but I mean, you're so right. Consumers drive trends. And I think what has been happening so much in bigger companies is they can't seem to get as close to consumers to really spot these trends and identify what's creating a really attractive brand like young entrepreneurs can. And that's why I think all of us are interested in these emerging brands. And I mean, Jason, you were the consumer, which gave you so much insight into what you were building. So thank you for talking to that and sharing your story. Marissa had to drop off, but I mean, I am so blown away and thankful for all of you for joining our panel today. Christine, Father, Jason, you guys are absolutely thought leaders in your various spaces, and we're so happy to call you all Austinites and to have you leaning into the CPG community. So thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
And Mark and Nathan, I'm sure you're about to pop on. There you are.
Once again, thank you all for this panel. This was phenomenal. I'm going to go back and watch this one again. This is the kind of caliber of people we have in Austin. We are very, very fortunate, from Kirsten all the way down to some of our newer people here in Austin, both Christine and Jason. Jason, I personally went and got Hoot chocolate from Central Market last weekend. My family devoured it. It was fantastic. But the fact is that we are very, very fortunate to have people of this caliber here pushing our businesses forward, making sure that we're more sophisticated in the CPG space, and just better things to come. Right now, we're going to jump into networking. So if anybody wants to do that, it's going to be a great time. You meet with certain people that you connect for 5 minutes and get to learn more about the people that are in the Austin area. But I really can't thank you enough for being on this panel and joining us today. So thank you all very, very much. And with that, I will allow you all to go from this session into the networking session and meet some folks. And then we're going back to our next panel in about 30 minutes. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.